I am waiting for you, Vicini. You told me to go back to the beginning. Wake up. This is where I am, and this is where I will stay. I will not be moved.
Well, good morning.
Good morning.
Namo Mita Butsu. I thought that would be an appropriate way to start our video today.
Yeah, Princess Bride is always good.
Great movie. Great. Let me stop sharing. There we go. Sorry, shared the SS Valiant there for a moment. Star Trek. Anyway, yeah. So I thought it'd be apropos because that's what we're doing today. That's where I am in my Jodo Shinshu journey once again. I need to go back to the beginning, back to Shakyamuni's beginning basic realizations, and not that there's anything basic about his realizations and teaching, but you know what I mean? Go back to the foundational realization and teachings that he had. Because if I'm going to, if faith in Buddhism, as we discussed, involves taking the Buddha at his word for us anyway, I'd say probably in general, but especially for Bombu, who have no wisdom, who live in Mappo and are Bombu and have no wisdom, so we can't see the truth of it ourselves. So obviously we have to take, there's a point where you have to say, okay, I'm deeply convinced that Shakyamuni's teaching is, and as much as me as a Bombu can assess that, I'm convinced deep in my mind and heart that his teaching is correct and is the teaching for his period, is the the true teaching for all time ever. And
and most importantly for me, right?
for me, yeah, that's exactly. The teaching is for me alone, so it has to be, I have to be satisfied with the answers,
Yeah.
And so yeah, we have to rely on, with no wisdom, then the quote unquote faith or trust in the teacher, in the world teacher, becomes paramount. You have to be able to some level take Shakyamuni at his word, being convinced deeply in one's own heart, mind that is deeply convinced, deeply convicted that, after having looked at his teachings and decided, yeah, this is the one, this is the world teacher, this is the ultimate, there's no more supreme teaching than this. You have to get to that point. And, I've been to this point where I've got to the kind of level of skepticism and frustration on my Jodo Shinshu path before. And this is what the handful of times that it's happened, I've always gone back to the beginning. Let's go back. What are the basic teachings here? What was Shakyamuni's realization? And the basic teachings, the foundational teachings, I should say, and go over that again to that's what I want to do with the series, Bombu, Buddhism for Bombu.
Yeah, and on that note, well, I do have one particular resource that I'd like to share with you that I think will be very, very helpful for this part of the journey. But I would like to say, yeah, what you said, faith in the Buddha's teaching, the Buddha's words, in Sanskrit, Shraddha, which, yes, we can translate it faith, but that has certain connotations in our culture. Yeah. So sometimes maybe confidence or yes. trust, yes. But it's really implying that you've seen and tested the teaching, and know for yourself, it's a subjective thing, right? You know for yourself that it is in fact gold, And then the problem is, like when Chuck says,
can I just say something real quick? The word faith, another way to look at it is if you use it in a more, when the word faith is used in more ordinary, in a non-spiritual way. When you hear someone say, about a leader, or some kind of policies, or some kind of person that's been put in charge of something. Or I'm just trying to think of like secular worldly examples of where someone will say, I have faith that this is the right thing to do. I have faith in this person. I have faith. Do you know what I mean? You're of confidence, you have trust, you have that this is the way to proceed. Do you see what I mean? It's more, if you take it out of the, take out the spiritual connotations a bit, that for the Western mind anyway, and well, and other religions have, about what faith is. If you take it out of that context and then just use it in that sort of ordinary, worldly, secular kind of context, that's a bit better approximation of what, because if you have, okay, I have faith that this is the person to be in charge, or this is the way to proceed, then you have trust and you're ready to roll with that. You know what I mean?
My problem with the word faith is always, I do kind of agree with the great Christian theologian Paul Tillich that the word faith needs to be resuscitated until it is. And he said that a long time ago, but it strikes me that it could still be true. However, I don't have a phobia of the word faith. I do believe it can be used as a valid translation.
Same here. I just, that's what when I hear it, I hear confidence, convinced of the, being able to trust because I'm convinced and confident in this person. Shakyamuni, that's what, anyway, sorry.
I think that's the problem, is it means different things to different people. For me, faith always implies doubt because I think the context, maybe the religious context or whatever, is that, well, I have my doubts, but I have faith,
I see what you're saying,
and
which is kind of interesting.
And it's very much based on, I have faith, right? I have faith. I believe. Whereas in Shraddha is actually the sort of the Dharma when we hear it or come into when we encounter it, so to speak, when we engage with it deeply. It's actually sort of the Dharma itself that is impressing this confidence on us. So it's not like I've made this decision to trust the Dharma, it's that the quality of the Dharma, we've tested it, we found that it's gold, and wow, it sure is gold. It's like when in the Kalama Sutta, when the Buddha is talking to the people of Kalama, and he says, the teaching should be tried as if it, like gold is tried. And I was thinking about that, and what he's saying, what Shakyamuni is saying there, is that each of us has to try the teaching for ourselves. You cannot, and I think I said this in a message maybe I sent to you earlier, you can't outsource that.
No.
You can't outsource faith. You can't outsource religious experience. And so, you can't take the gold to the essayer and have it essayed and come back and read the page. Oh, they say it's gold. Now, of course, people can, witness to the truth of Dharma and so on. And I think that's an important part of, having a good teacher and so on. And that's very, very important. But ultimately, when it comes down to it, each of us has to do the testing for him or herself, right? Or their self, or whoever's self.
Exactly. Sorry, can you hear that the motorcycle's going by there?
No.
Oh, okay, good.
Not at all.
It's the noise squelching is working well on that. Sorry about that. Anyway, so yeah, it kind of comes back to that, to what the teaching in Jodo Shinshu of the teaching is for me alone.
Right. That's very important.
This mission of Amida is for me alone. So it kind of has to be, that's it kind of you're kind of has to come back to that. You have to anyway, yeah.
Yeah, and well, religious experience generally true, if it's a true religion is ultimately subjective, right? So
Yeah.
if I don't engage with sure, Buddhism might be the supreme teaching, whatever that means. But if it's not the teaching for me, I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, so it's a really individual. Everyone who heard the Buddha, they didn't go to all the cities in India and listen to every teacher until they knew that, oh well, comparing, weighing the different teachings, I do believe that Shakyamuni has the best one. That's not what it was. It was their encounter with Shakyamuni and his Dharma was just, it met what they needed. It met their spiritual needs in that time. And that is why people would just, and of course you had people who had, listened to many teachers coming to hear what's this new guy have to say, But ultimately you had people from every strata of society, every background. And when they, converted to the Buddha, what the Buddha was teaching, it was because it just kind of, hit them that, yes, this is the way for me. This is the thing that will cure my ailment, so to speak. So, yeah, I think it's a very important aspect of my religion generally, but especially Buddhism.
I think that's another mark of Mappo. Another difficulty of Mappo is because we have the technology, the information technology that we have. If someone is a spirit, a sincere, true spiritual seeker, or even if they're just, kind of just interested in spirituality and whatever. I mean, we have so much available. There's things
Yeah.
I wouldn't have even known about even 20 years ago, or,
right.
Do you know what I mean? If it weren't for,
Yeah.
the internet, and do you know what I mean? Like, we have so much, though I did frequent libraries a lot prior. I was my own Lycos, as I've said, taking it really way back. I was on my own Lycos, my own Google. But I would frequent libraries, but that wasn't the same. It's the level of information we have about different spiritual paths and religions, both mainstream, obscure, small. If you are a true seeker, you're going to have so much to look at. So, that's a big difference between us.
And some of it good, some of it not so good, right?
The problem exactly
was the top results, if you just type in Jodo Shinshu, I don't even want to think what will come up, on the top Google results.
Especially with certain search engines breaking its own algorithms several years ago for various reasons. Like you can't really rely. You have to go to other search engines you have to pick different search engines to find what you want to find sometimes. But anyway.
Yeah. Well, to sort of open maybe on that note with your introduction, maybe I thought I could read the last entry in the journal, or sorry, not the journal of Shin Buddhism, the Shin Buddhist primer by, written in part by the late Reverend George Gattenby.
That did come to mind that we should when we were having discussions on Messenger. I did think we should, I wondered whether it would be good to go back to that as well.
It would be good. And so
let me set this up.
Read it.
Oh, well, I can, if you want to share it, I can.
I could share it.
Share the screen.
And I think especially for, anyone really coming to investigating Jodo Shinshu, whether they've been on the path for, however many years, how much time. Oh, I can share now, right?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
It's an important reminder, I think, which is that Shin Buddhism is obviously Buddhism. And Buddhism, all Buddhist schools have these fundamental tenets, these core foundational teachings, without which, as we'll see when we talk about the Dharma seals, a teaching actually can't be considered Buddhist. So this is from the primer of Shin Buddhism. Let me just scroll up to the top.
All right.
It's John Paraskevopoulos and George Gattenby wrote this primer of Shin Buddhism, originally published in 1995 by the Honganji Buddhist Mission of Australia. And we're fortunate that it's been transcribed online. But there's a lot of really good content in here about all the basics of Shinshu. But anyway, in conclusion, well, starting with here, indeed, we have focused almost entirely on the specific principles of Shin Buddhism, but no school of Buddhism can be appreciated without a prior acquaintance with all of the basic ideas upon which Buddhism is founded. Conclusion: we urge readers to examine the following essentials because, when viewed in isolation from them, a skewed view of Shin Buddhism will result. The Four Noble Truths, the Three Signata, namely anatman or non-self, anicca or impermanence, and dukkha or suffering. And finally, nirvana, which, as we have seen earlier, in Shin Buddhism is synonymous with Amida Buddha and the Pure Land. These are the teachings upon which Buddhism is grounded.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny, the three, I found another thing that I'll do, I'll put a link in this video when I upload it, was for the three things I wanted to discuss, which are, three marks of existence. I want to go back, what was Shakyamuni's realizations? What was his, three marks of existence, dependent origination, and the Four Noble Truths. I at least wanted to start the series with this. Obviously, probably need to do a video on each one of those alone. And then, but I found, after I'd kind of thought about that, and I was looking, on, the internet, YouTube and things about what, things related to what, going back to the beginning, as I say, for the basics. I found a really good presentation by a YouTuber by the name of Professor G or Prof G. I don't know whether that's his nickname or whether he's just, being down with the chillins with that moniker, YouTube moniker. But whatever the case, he's an excellent presenter and did a talk on those three topics. It was really, really helpfully simplifies and well, not oversimplifies, but it goes into some detail, but just a good basic presentation on those three. So I'll put the link for that in the description of the video as well. But those are the three things areas I wanted to start with, and certainly the other things that actually now that were mentioned in that conclusion as well, but which are kind of actually part of all of that. So, yeah. So yeah,
Great.
excellent.
Shall we dive right in? I will say, disclaimer, my knowledge of early Buddhism and doctrine and so on it's not complete. So there will be points where I won't necessarily have all the, we might have to refer to some people who actually know what they're talking about. And on that note, I have a book I want to recommend to you.
Good.
And it is A History of Indian Buddhism by the late, great Japanese professor of Buddhist studies, Dr. Akira Hirakawa. And the first half of it has been translated into English. as I'm sure you probably know, the Japanese scholarship on Buddhism is by far peerless, bar none, the best in the world. And to the point where anyone who is serious about studying Buddhism, whether they come from other traditions or, Theravada, whatever, they usually end up studying it at a Japanese university because that is where all of the, the knowledge has really accumulated. And Professor Hirakawa was really one of the leading authorities on Buddhism generally, especially Indian Buddhism. And of course, early Buddhism was Indian, obviously. So this book actually covers Indian Buddhism from early Buddhism all the way up to the advent or the arrival or the beginning of Mahayana. So it does not include Mahayana, but it has it's very easy to read, very clear, explains everything. I've actually read it once and then it was so good, I've been going through reading it again and highlighting like passages and things.
Excellent.
There's so much good stuff in there. So, A History of Indian Buddhism, Professor Akira Hirakawa.
Yeah.
Great book. I think it is floating around on the internet in PDF format. I don't condone that, but
right.
if you can get a hold of it somewhere, try to do so. But great book. When we get to the
or check when the copyright kind of stuff gets to that point where it's sort of common, but anyway, so but definitely would try to get the actual book itself in some purchase the book in some form. But I think I have heard of that, or you may have a long time ago recommended it before, but I think that's something, it's those early teachings, I think sometimes not just in Jodo Shinshu, but in all Mahayana schools, sometimes it's a little bit neglected. I mean, it's kind of assumed, and it's not, do you know what I mean, fleshed out or gone, or kind of referred to, but not. Right. And I think it's really important because there's such good. That's why it was refreshing. I started my Buddhist Arts and Humanities series, and I started a reading about Buddhist art from a and it's a Theravada school. It's and just to hear that perspective, as I'm reading through it is good, because it does take it back to those, and sometimes that it's good to have that foundational, perspective again. So
definitely. Well, this book will give you that and more. It's a real read. I would consider it essential reading for any English language Buddhist. It's definitely on my list of my top 10 for sure.
Good. Excellent.
And when we get to the dependent origination and all of that, we probably will want to kind of follow along with Professor Hirakawa's, because he breaks it all down with like the charts, and then he describes what it all means. And I had a lot of realizations from reading his book that I just didn't know. Like, I always assumed that the links were linear and only happened in one lifetime and all kinds of, and he corrected a lot of that. So it's really good. And it's 100% reliable because obviously, an authority, leading authority on Buddhism with an actual PhD, not just someone on the internet doing their own studies.
Perfect example right here. We can have faith and trust and confidence in what he writes and teaches. That's a perfect example of what that means to me.
Right.
So anyways, so shall we start? Did you want to start with one of the other documents that you had about the three marks of existence, or just that one? Because I can share that real quick if you want the one.
No,
that
that's great. That's the only one that I really found that I
Okay.
think is gives a good overview. So,
all right, I will get that shared in a minute. I in our Big Tent Buddhism, Big Tent Jodo Shinshu, here we're going to be utilizing the Nichiren library for a
right.
little, for our little discussion here. So just bear with me a sec. Just sharing now. And this I love this actually, this website, because it's almost like for Nichiren Buddhism, and I'd say to a certain degree in Buddhism in general, it's almost like the level of it's pretty much the equivalent of Shinran works for a Jodo Shinshu.
Yeah.
For Nichiren Buddhists, this is pretty much the a very similar kind of thing. Has all the writings, has its glossary, has lots of scholarship kind of behind it. But anyway, so yeah, the three, and I've used this a lot in my explorations of Buddhism in general, but also specifically Nichiren Buddhism and Lotus Sutra related teachings and Buddhism. But right, so shall I begin reading, or did you want to begin the reading?
Yes, please go ahead.
All right, let me just. I can, I think it's probably large enough. So, all right. So, the three Dharma seals, or so also three seals of Dharma. Yes, another way of saying it, or the three marks of existence, etc. Three identifying principles of Buddhism: impermanence, non-self, and nirvana. Suffering is added to the above three to form the four Dharma seals of it. Impermanence means that nothing is lasting or fixed. All is temporary and changing. Non-self means that all things and phenomena are without self-nature, that they have no independent existence of their own. Nirvana is the highest state of calm and serenity in which one is released from suffering. Suffering means that all existence is suffering. Dharma seals signify a guarantee of the authenticity of doctrines. Again, coming back to that confidence, trust, faith in this. The three Dharma seals were used as standards to determine whether or not a sutra or a doctrine was valid. If it met these standards, it was determined to be a valid Buddhist teaching. Chinese Mahayana Buddhism regarded the three or four Dharma seals as a Hinayana concept. It established instead the one Dharma seal, which was the principle of ultimate reality or true aspect of all phenomena. The Dharma seal of the ultimate reality is based on the Lotus Sutra, which sets forth the true aspect of all phenomena. Interesting. That last bit.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting points in this.
So, yeah. So I can't remember the Sanskrit terminology for each. Is it for is it anicca, impermanence? Is that anicca?
Yeah, I have it here.
Okay, good.
Okay, this is actually this is either Pali. Oh, it's actually Pali, but that's close enough anyway, since they're early Buddhism. Sabe Dhamma Anatta, that's no self. Sabe Sankhara Anicca, which is all phenomena are impermanent.
Yep.
And then Sabe Sankhara Dukkha, which is all phenomena are suffering. So those are the main.
Anicca, anatta, dukkha. Yeah, those are the three. That's the Pali. Sorry, it was the Pali that I was. Yeah, anicca, anatta, dukkha. So yeah. What do you want to start with discussing of the 3 or 4?
Well, the thing is, you know, if we discuss anything, we'll end up having to discuss everything.
In the other, yeah, that's true. So okay.
So if you have any thoughts, go ahead.
Okay, then I guess we could start with well, just overall, I want to say that as far as religious teachers, spiritual teachers go, I don't really recall any other spiritual teacher or figure taking reality to this level, you know, to this, you know, you can't go further. Like this is, do you know what I mean? Like this is the bare bones of reality, if you like, or you can't go, do you know what I mean? This
Yeah.
the deepest, that's my first impression of the 3 or 4 seals, or the 3 or 4 marks. Is you can't go further than that. If you know what I mean? Like you can't, as far as understanding sort of reality or how life works or doesn't work, or do you know what I mean? Or what the issue is or what the issues are. This takes it as far as it will go, you know, this. So to me, that's my first sort of level of confidence or trust in it is, you know, and I don't see any other religion really framing it quite this way, or, you know, any other religious teaching that takes it. There might be ones that might have some similar aspects or nuances, or, you know, like in some Hindu, you know, Vedic, or, you know, teachings that might somewhat sort of approximate some aspects of it, but they don't go, you know, they don't go all the way. They don't.
Well, non-self, no self.
Yeah, they don't have no self.
It's a major sticking point for Orthodox Hinduism. So
yeah.
So why?
Yeah.
So
anyways, but you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm just trying to say that would be the closest approximation of all the religions that might somewhat reflect this a bit, you know, but still not even close to what Shakyamuni has realized here and taught us, you know.
Right. It's interesting, you know, first of all, we have to know what's being discussed when we talk about Dharma here, right? And in Hinduism, the word Dharma typically is referring to someone's sort of duty, or that kind of idea. But this term Dharma in early Buddhism was really, it meant phenomena or things, sort of, or entity, kind of, is what it meant.
Exactly, yeah.
I'm actually scrolling through Professor Hirakawa's book.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, let's
really
use that as a
good
guide.
It's a really good
We have high confidence, high trust in that, high faith in that.
Oh, I can find. So
It's,
the meaning
well,
of
phenomena
Dharma
is another word, another way you can, in Buddhism, all phenomena. It's all Dharma is all phenomena, all
right. Yes. In the
things
samsara
that happen kind of in samsaric existence.
Yes. Oh, here we go. Here we go. Ah, I found it. Yay. Should I share my screen
Yes.
briefly?
Yeah, please do. Yeah. So I'll stop sharing 1 sec.
Okay. I think I can share. Here we go. Now, the yellow is my annotations. Just you can ignore. So this is from Professor Hirakawa's book, History of Indian Buddhism, the Dharma in Dependent Origination. So I'm just going to read it a little bit because it's good anyway. Seeing the Dharma was an important religious aspect of the Buddha's enlightenment. When the 5 monks heard the Buddha preach his first sermon in the Deer Park and heard about the Four Noble Truths, they saw the Dharma and realized the Dharma. Their pure Dharma eyes, Pali, Dhamma, Chakung, Udapati, obviously I don't know how to pronounce Pali, so I'm just going to do my best, were opened. The term Dharma, or Pali Dhamma, comes from the root dhr, D-H-R, which means to hold or keep. From that root, the term came to mean that which does not change. It thus was applied to the ideas and norms that maintain the social and moral order. Besides good, virtue, and truth, from ancient times in India, the term dharma was used to refer to the customs and duties observed by people. In other words, to the social order. So that's what I was kind of referring to. In Buddhism, the term is used with all these meanings. For example, in verse 5 of the Dhammapada, the term is found with the meaning of truth. Enmity is not eliminated by enmity. Only when enmity is abandoned is it eliminated. This is an unchanging and eternal truth, or Pali, Dhamma Sanantana. In this way, Buddhism adopted uses of the term Dharma that dated from before the time of the Buddha. Buddhists also broadened the meaning of the term Dharma. Before the Buddha, the term was used to refer to the good and the truth. That which was bad and not good was called adharma in Sanskrit to indicate that it was not included within the Dharma. However, Buddhists classified even defilements, klesha dharma, and evils, papaka akushala dharma, as dharmas. Thus, a new and broader explanation of dharma as an element of existence, bhava, was developed. In this study, when the term is used to refer to unchanging truths, it's capitalized. When it refers to constantly changing elements of existence, it is not capitalized. So there's two meanings, and we have both in Buddhism. Dharma, of course, can mean the truth that the Buddha awakened to, that the Buddha taught. The Buddha Dharma, is what traditionally what we call Buddhism as a teaching or a religion. But then there's also this other meaning of dharmas, like you'll see in the larger sutra as well, when it talks about all dharmas are, impermanent and unarising and unarising and unperishing, right? That's in this meaning of dharma as an element of existence. So that's, I think, an important note to
make.
And then, of course,
perhaps we should just read this. I mean, how long is this section?
Well, it's some of it. I mean, there's a lot of. It's all good.
Well, just continue with what you were going to read.
Let me see. Here we go.
Just continue with what you were going to read there at the first.
Here we go. Finally, the use of Dharma. Oh, this is what I wanted to say. I was just saying.
Okay.
The use of Dharma as meaning thing. I said Dharma in Buddhism means a thing, basically. Pali nisata or nijiva is peculiar to Buddhism. And by peculiar, he means unique to Buddhism. This use of the term does not occur in the Vedas or in the early Upanishads. The dharmas that the Buddha realized in his enlightenment are included in this usage. When the Buddha realized enlightenment, he understood nirvana. Nirvana is truth and real existence. In the sense that it really exists, nirvana is included as a dharma. In other words, dharma is used to refer to that aspect of phenomena that has the quality of truth, that is, of having an enduring quality. A practitioner sees the dharma when he discovers in what sense phenomena endure.
Yeah, I was sort of, when we were just a bit earlier when we were discussing this, I was thinking, well, it's still, even when you refer to a dharma or a dhamma as a thing or a phenomena happening in
Mhm.
samsara, it's still pointing out the truth of it, of what it,
Right.
when it's
Yes.
referred to as a
Exactly.
dharma, it's pointing out its impermanence, its dependent origination, it's no self, it's all those things all at once. So it is, in a sense, a truth, the truth about samsaric existence, you know.
Exactly. And that's,
And then
you know, what
and he goes further and says, well, it's also referring to nirvana as
Mm,
the true reality.
mm.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. I mean, what did
So
the
it's all
Buddha
true.
awaken to, right? He awoke to the the way in which things truly exist, the truth about reality, about dharmas, right? So, yeah, and then it goes on to say that the skandhas are considered to be dharmas, and so on and so forth. So,
Mhm.
I mean, there's a lot
This
of,
is all, that's all part of, yeah, discussing
right,
dependent origination is, and then it, you know, it goes into, yeah, there's the 12, yeah, the 12 nidana. He's calling it the bases here, 12. Yeah, so you
mm,
got the 5 aggregates, the 12 nidana or bases,
yeah,
18 elements,
yeah, and this is
all that
important
makes up,
too.
well, it's all
The
the constituents or the aggregates or the, you know, everything is just an aggregate of everything else. It's just
Right,
everything, including our thoughts,
mm,
emotions, our words right now, this video.
right, and this is important here too. These dharmas were not substantial, eternally existing entities. They arose through dependent origination, pratitya,
Yeah,
samutthana, dharma. And oh man, this is all so
I think
good.
it's, I know.
What a,
Well, that's, I'm just thinking maybe dependent origination actually is probably the best place to
yeah,
start
yeah, yeah.
with this discussion
Well,
because it kind of
but
leads,
we brought up
it
the
kind of
three
leads to
schools.
everything else. It kind of, do you know what I mean? It kind of tells you all the others within
Exactly.
the same, you know, because it, oh, well, that, yeah, that's what it means by, that's what impermanence means is
Yeah.
there's no, and it's constantly changing and it's, you know what I mean? It's
Right.
constituting, everything's a constituent of everything else. And there's no self in that, you know, there's
Mm,
no separate, you know, self um,
mm.
nature. And because we think there is, leads to suffering. Do you know what I mean? So
Right.
it's all
Yeah.
kind
And
of in that,
it's
like you said
all
earlier, one kind of leads to the other. I think dependent origination kind of encompasses the whole thing. And the sort
yeah,
of way out of
I
that is
agree.
nirvana, the fourth,
Yeah.
sort of, you know, the sort of, or the end
Mm,
of that is nirvana.
right. I think though that the three seals are very important, and I do want to um let's go back now to
Okay,
the text
yeah,
from the Nichiren library. Go ahead and you
the
can share.
Nichiren, the Nichiren,
Um yeah, the library text.
yeah,
And what's I do have a couple thoughts. So one of them is note, this is very important. The three Dharma seals were used as standards to determine whether or not a sutra or a doctrine was valid. If it met these three standards, it was determined to be a valid
mm-hmm.
Buddhist teaching. And this is interesting because the criterion of whether a sutra in Buddhism, especially in Mahayana Buddhism, of course, is to be considered Buddha Vakana, the word of the Buddha, is not whether the historical figure of Shakyamuni, if those words actually came out of his mouth in the way that they're written on the paper.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
not the
No,
criteria.
no, exactly.
Rather, it's whether or not this sutra or this teaching is characterized by these three
Yeah,
seals of the
yes,
Dharma. And
exactly.
in that sense, any teaching that has these three seals can be considered a Buddhist teaching, right? If it has if it measures up, so to speak, to this standard it's like the rod stick, so to speak, or the ruling stick for Buddhist teaching. And this is interesting because Nagarjuna of the middle way fame, when he defended the Mahayana Sutras famously, because people were saying, hey, these aren't the words of Shakyamuni. I mean, we know the guys who are writing these sutras. These can't be the real sutras, So there's just literary, And Nagarjuna's argument was, well, no, because they do any teaching. He basically pointed to this and said any teaching that has the teaching of the Buddha Dharma can be considered a Buddhist teaching, a sutra. And so this is very important for Mahayana Buddhists in particular, because it is what gives us the authenticity, not just of the Nikayas or the Pali, the Agamas, the canon of early Buddhism, but also of the Mahayana Sutras, which in most cases were written down many centuries later, right? And ultimately, the Mahayana Sutras, they express oftentimes in very ornate and in poetic language the spirit of Shakyamuni Buddha, right? The real spirit of his enlightenment and the sort of the living aspect of nirvana as it's manifested and continues to be, manifested to Buddhists who are seeking, who are on path, so to speak. So I just wanted to point that out because it is very important. It's something that some people don't quite understand always. So,
and I think it's unique. Again, this is another aspect of things that are unique to Buddhism. Saying that it's, this isn't the literal words. It's kind of a warning, actually, about literalism. And the idea is to get the meaning. If the meaning points to these Dharma seals, to these marks, then then it's authentic teaching, not we follow the specific. Literally, these are the words of the Buddha. No, that's not how. And the Buddha didn't teach that way. The Buddha said words are part of the problem. Really, it's I can only. They're a skill and means for me to teach this to you. They're not the meaning. They're not the ultimate Dharma. So, and I think that's a unique thing, because if you think of other religions. You kind of have to look at it like, now, obviously, I think later on with apologetics and scholars started to look at these things differently with religions. But, I think just, other sacred texts are looked at. Buddhism is unique in the way I think it genuinely looks at its religious texts. Yes, with reverence, yes, you know what I mean, but at the same time we see them as it's all a skill it means. It's all
it's the sutras are an expression of the absolute, of the truth, which is beyond the reach of words. In words. So it's the finger pointing at the moon analogy.
Exactly.
And so the text is meant to point us to the truth, but the truth is not the words. The words, the truth is in the words. It's the words are pointing us to the truth. But any kind of fundamentalistic, literalist interpretation of the sutras is always gonna kind of fall flat on its face. And because we have in Buddhism such a broad canon, so to speak, that's how we ended up with this enormous, our Bible is like a library. I mean, our scriptural text fill,
It is.
multiple storerooms of the Korean printing of the Tripitaka, fills like multiple warehouses,
Exactly.
and there's, and of course there are many different viewpoints, and part of that too led to the interest in, and you find this in Chinese Buddhism especially, to sort of take this vast compendium of literature, which I've heard scholars say that the sort of outpouring of Mahayana Buddhist literature is like unprecedented in world history. It's really a phenomenon that is kind of incredible from from however you look at it. But
Exactly.
what Chinese like Tiandai or Tiantai and other schools wanted to do was, how do we take this vast compendium, which we accepted all as the word of the Buddha, and make sense of it and make it coherent, so that, because one of the important rules was that the Buddha couldn't contradict himself. He couldn't have any contradictory,
Exactly.
any contradiction. And of course, there are a lot of different in the vast, library of Buddhist sutras. There's a lot of different viewpoints and perspectives. So one of the ways that they did that, of course, was Tendai's, famous categorization of the sutras, sort of as if it was teachings in Shakyamuni's lifetime, and then at the end you had the Lotus Sutra, of course, very important. Since we're using the Nichiren library here, we should point out that in Tendai, which Nichiren, of course, was highly influenced by, the Lotus Sutra is the supreme teaching.
Exactly.
Anyway, sorry, that was a bit of a...
No, it's good. It's totally agreed. I just think it's just really, I didn't think of this way when I said let's go back to the beginning, but kind of the fact that 3 marks, where we're starting with discussion, 3 or 4 marks of existence are the seals, the seals of the authentication in Buddhism as well. That's of course always on my mind, but I hadn't thought about that in the context of the reason I'm going back to this is to check my confidence, my trust, my faith, my deep, that Shakyamuni's teaching, just what I mean. And so these are the ultimate authenticators. These 3 or 4 seals are the way you say, is this authentic, Buddhist teaching? Is this the authentic Dharma? Is this, so it's just kind of brings that back to, emphasizes, this is the right place to start. If you're going to go back to the beginning, this is
the most important thing, right? Is whether to know, how to know if the teaching is the Buddha's teaching or not. It's the most basic, it doesn't get more fundamental or foundational than that, right? So
exactly. That's where you have to start. Okay, this is, you have to be convinced of that as well. To be convinced not just of that this is of Shakyamuni, and be convinced and confident and trusting and have faith in that this is that Shakyamuni is the world turning teacher, but like that all of Buddhism that we have that's passed on the Dharma is trustworthy, that can be, do you know what I mean? You have to have the same confidence that it's being, what's being transmitted is the authentic teaching as well. So there's layers of trust here. And I think that's another thing. Remember how we talk about how sometimes things aren't necessarily communicated or transmitted very well in Jodo Shinshu. Sometimes that's one thing that's missed. There's layers of these trust. And I always tried to say that when I was talking to people. Wait. First, I know it's about entrusting Amida, but like I've got some layers here of trust that I'm not even confident about yet with the whole Dharma and the whole all of Buddhism and Shakyamuni. So that's where, I need to be. And I know Paul Roberts would, would come back to that and say, what it really means is you have to be confident that Shakyamuni is the smartest guy in the room, is how he put it, is the absolute smartest guy in the room. He would refer to that, but and point toward that, but he wouldn't. I didn't ever see where he elaborated a lot. I might have missed it in the prolific email group, True Shin Buddhism. You can't. There would be no way to keep up with all that was discussed in there. But he might have elaborated on at some point. And I've never really heard anybody so far kind of say, yeah, you've got to. There's layers of trust here. Before you can even approach the idea of, do you see what I mean? I think.
Right, but what precedes trust? What comes first? Is the question. Which
openness to
right? Listening.
Openness,
Thus have I heard.
Yes, being able to be receptive. Yeah.
As Rinyu says, the Buddha Dharma begins and ends in hearing. So first, whenever we have I like the analogy or the example of the Buddha's first sermon, because you had I believe it was 5 monks and the Buddha, and a lot of deer was his first audience. And he tells them what he discovered. And the first thing they do before, faith arises and the Dharma eye opens is what? They hear, they listen. So there's a lot of people who like to talk and spout their opinions and views, and they don't listen. they don't. And by listen, I mean that in a broad sense. So study, read, listen to reliable,
reliable sources,
podcasts, whatever,
Dharma dialogue, Dharma discussion.
Yeah, and discussing, of course, is important as well.
So
very important.
Yeah, so I think that's another reason I, want to come back to this.
I think maybe in our next session, because I think unless you have something else to say on the 3.
No, I think this is a good start. I think a good
I agree.
Opening of the discussion on this. I just with what you were just saying, I harkens back to the teaching, the Buddhist teaching always begins and ends with listening, with hearing. So you have to be, like you say, before trust, you even have to be willing to listen, open to the possibility that something besides your mind might actually have something authentic and true to view and to be worth considering. Something outside your own mind and life and experience and opinions might be worth considering. You have to get to that point of this is another thing too of the Bombu existence. I think it's similar to the idea in 12-step groups of hitting bottom. A bit. You kind of have to get to a point, you can't be helped until you know you need help, until it's got you licked, it's got you on the ropes, down for the count, and you need help. It's a similar, I think there's a similar thing with us Bombu. We have to see see the reality of our situation in some way, and how much we are on the ropes when it comes to samsara, how much we are down for the count when it comes to samsaric existence, and how precarious our existence in that description of the guy, the human, Chucky Mooney's description of human life as the guy hanging and the tiger at the top of the cliff, and he's hanging off the cliff and he's trying to get food, and there's the dragons or whatever down below in the and that was like Chucky Moody's description of you. And we have to get to the point where we realize that in order to be open to go, and that's not just our existence but our mind. That's a reflection of our mind, and so we might be wrong. We need to get to the point where we realize, okay, we might be wrong, might actually be wrong, and we can't rely on our own opinions or mind or or understanding or whatever. We have to get to that point, to be open. We can't, until we get to that stage, we can't really be open to listen, let alone trust in anything.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, yeah, really good.
Yeah, should we conclude this episode and then maybe pick up again with the dependent origination? I think is what kind of ties in.
Yeah, definitely sounds.
But we
good.
also need to discuss, the meaning of no self, non-self.
I think dependent origination is a place to start, because it just pretty much points the finger toward each of those. So.
Yeah. And using, I think, Hirakawa Sensei's book as a bit of a guide will be helpful, because he has a very, very easy to follow way of breaking it down and explaining the important aspects. So. Looking forward to it.
Yes, likewise. Shall we do Senbutsu to take us out?
Yeah, absolutely. Do you want to stop sharing the screen? So
yes, of course, yes, definitely. There we go.
All right. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu.
Namo. Excellent.
All right.
Well, good to see you again. It had been a while since we.
It has indeed.
Thanks so much. And let's continue next week, hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully. I'll let you know, but I should be able.
All right. Take care.
All right.
All the best.
You too. All right. Thanks.